welcome. We're obviously today going to be covering the public sector. So the topic of today is your website putting your organization at risk? It's a big question. Got myself and Martin going to do some introductions in a second, just to walk through that. If I come back to Recite Me very quickly, just give you an idea of who we are and what we do. So Recite Me, we're a global digital accessibility company. Our focus is mainly on helping organizations create a more inclusive online experience. So it's our favorite thing to do, which is why we love running these webinars. Now we started, those of you who haven't come across us before, we started with in assistive technology way back in 2009. So I think that's 17 plus years ago. And we've grown into having an accessibility testing team. We do consultancy, some accessibility training, and effectively our mission is to help organizations just improve their digital inclusion for people, staff, but also if we think about our relatives, friends, family, colleagues, that's what we're here for. So for us, I'm going to do a cheeky plug moment, and that is that we've just recently launched a PDF remediation suite. So Martin's going to tell you a little bit about that as we go through the session today. But if you want any more information on that outside of that, just reach out. We're happy to do that. So Martin, would you like to introduce yourself, and then I'll come back to myself and I'll introduce me as well, and then we'll get on with the session.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, hi everyone. As it says on screen, my role here at Recite Me is Director of New Revenue. I've been here 10 years, and all that job title really means is I get to look after the new business sales team here in the UK office. We also have offices in the US and Australia with some folks in doing the same sort of jobs over there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. And those that haven't come across me, I'm Chris Holloway. I'm Head of Accessibility for Recite Me. So the areas I focus on around digital consultancy around accessibility. So I run the accessibility team. Part of that is that we do accessibility consultancy. We also go out and speak to lovely people about their websites. So we provide training as well as obviously support internally. So everything that we're going to talk about today in terms of internal compliance, accessibility statements, everything you're seeing is actually something that we do internally as well. So we hold ourselves effectively to the same standards. So we live and breathe everything that we're going to be talking about as we go through. So if I come across to myself first, sorry, Martin, we're going to look at what we're covering today. So we're going to be talking about public sector accessibility law. Okay, so you obviously see sections around PSBAR, but also the Equalities Act as well. You'll see that focused throughout. What we've learned through working with organizations who've been audited. So we've come across a few different clients as we go through. And obviously we've learned lessons as well from obviously GDS audits. So we're very happy to kind of walk through that. Like I said, if you've got any questions on anything, we'll take a break and we'll help with those. We're going to briefly cover PDF accessibility, which is Martin's absolute favorite topic of the day. And then obviously we're going to look at things that, what does good accessibility in public sector look like? And we'll hopefully cover some of those answers as well for you. Okay, so I am actually going to pass over to Martin now with the next slide.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So there's lots of acronyms around. So I'm going to refer to the Public Sector Bodies Accessibility Regulations 2018 as PSBAR from now on. So hopefully that will make sense to everyone. And then we'll hear a lot about WCAG or WCAG. I use WCAG. That's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And those are the two things that we're going to be talking about to begin with. The PSBAR, it's important to recognize that that's not a standard in itself. WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Think of those as almost like an international rule book for digital accessibility. So covers things like keyboard navigation, color contrast, compatibility with screen readers, and a whole lot more. And it includes PDFs. And the expectation from PSBAR is that public sector websites and apps and PDFs meet WCAG 2.2 AA. So in practical terms, PSBAR requires 4 things of you. One, it's meet those regulations, meet that WCAG 2.2 AA level. Now, WCAG can get very technical and complicated, so we're just going to stay high level today. 2.2 AA is the level you need to strive for. There might be some people on the call who don't know what that means. Maybe Chris can explain a little bit more later if there are some specific questions, or we can help with that afterwards. But for now, we're just going to assume that you know what that means. Part of the requirements for PSBAR is that you have to have an accessibility statement. You have to have one. I still see public sector websites where there isn't even an accessibility statement. And so when that happens, you know that there's an accessibility gap in that organization. It might be an admin gap, but the chances are it's a knowledge gap as well. The thing with that statement is there are specific things it should do for you. It should document transparently any issues you know you have, and it should adequately signpost for anybody visiting that page where they report any issues they find. There's some tips that we've got on what that reporting mechanism might look like to avoid some of the pitfalls. That's coming later. But the idea with your statement is that it's a window into what you're doing. It's not a shield or a disclaimer. It has to be accurate. And it's not about achieving conformance to the standard overnight. It's about having an evidenced plan, an evidenced action plan of what you are doing to meet that WCAG 2.2 AA. Something we talk about here a lot with our customers is most of them recognize you can't do everything, so you can't identify and fix every single accessibility issue overnight, but you also can't do nothing. You can't pretend that there isn't an issue when there might be. And so you have to find what's proportionate. And so part of our role is helping organizations find out what that proportionate action looks like, and then you evidence it in the statement. Now, I think we might have posted in the chat, we've got an example of a template accessibility statement. So you're welcome to go and grab that, compare it with what you've already got. And yeah, it's based on the GDS guidance. So GDS, another acronym that will feature throughout today, is Government Digital Service. And so Government Digital Service are the organization who are going to go and test your websites. They're going to be doing the spot checking of, is this compliant? And the first place they'll look is the statement. So before we move on, there's going to be a poll. And I just want you all to go and dive onto your own websites, click on your accessibility statement, which usually means scrolling to the footer somewhere, and then just tell us what level of accessibility does your current statement say you are meeting. And there are some options on screen. So it's either 2.2 AA, which is where PSBAR requires you to be, 2.2 AA partial, 2.1 AA, 2.1 AA partial, something else, or it's not stated, or you just don't know or can't find it. So we'll give that a couple of minutes for everyone to answer. And then we'll look at, well, we'll see what kind of answers we get, and we'll compare it to something we prepared earlier.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they find accessibility statements scary. I think that's, one of the things that you're being transparent. You're trying to share what best practice you're following, but also sometimes when I've worked with clients, they see that as being almost a red flag to come and find me. And I think what we're doing is with an accessibility statement is we're demonstrating that we genuinely care about accessibility to start with. We're documenting what we're trying to do about it. But also we're giving people. So remember, this is a people thing. We're giving people the option to report an accessibility barrier in an easy way that fits them, that allows them to carry on living the life that they need to and be independent and be able to access things that they deserve to. So I think accessibility statements for me, they're really important. I think they're really important for for a number of reasons, but it's about having that collective statement that everybody can look at and see where you are. I think that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, and it's about it being truthful, but it's important that it has that action plan associated to it. Um, it won't surprise anybody probably to know that we've had instances where we've had conversations with organizations where you maybe say, look, well, your statement's out of date. And within a day or two, the WCAG level changes, but nothing else on the statement. And so it makes you think, well, is the work actually happening,
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
definitely not the way to approach things. So
I agree. Absolutely.
is that long enough for the poll? Do we see some results? We got some results. Okay, interesting. What have we got? We've got 20% claiming compliance to 2.2 AA, 33% partial, 23%, and then 17% at 2.1. So what's that, 40%? All right, awesome. Thank you. So if we go to the next slide. So this is some analysis we did. It's pretty close to exactly what that poll just showed. So on the poll we just did, we had 20% 2.2 AA. We found 18 of the 500 random websites that we checked were claiming 2.2 AA. 32% we found were 2.2 AA partial, and in this poll here is 33%. And then in our poll, we had 40%, which was at a 2.1. And in our research, we had 41%. And then we had 1% something else, and 7% didn't know. So it almost exactly matches the randomized sample of 500. So I think I can start to rely on that as an indication of the public sector across the UK. But what's interesting about it is that only 20% in our poll, 18% in the research are claiming full conformance with WCAG AA, and 32 or 33% claiming partial conformance. Now, I have a wry smile with partial conformance. You might have a view on this, Chris, but my view is you might as well claim AAA partial conformance. That's being flippant, but it's true, right? Like 2.2 AA partial conformance is accepted. It's acceptable when GDS view it. They take that as being truthful, but it has to be backed up with what the issues are and what you're doing about them. Anybody whose organization is saying 2.1 AA, 2.1 partial, or anything else, the first thing you need to do is take action on the statement, but then make it truthful. You need to be aiming for 2.2 and 2.2 AA at that. The expectation, as we said, is 2.2 AA under PSBAR. So yeah, I come back to this idea: you can't do everything, so don't think you have to, but equally you can't do nothing. So if you take one thing away, it's let's go and look at our statement. Let's figure out, when did we last test the site? When did we last update the statement? What level are we actually at? Shameless plug, we can help you with all that, but I guess you knew that. The next aim is not just update the statement, but it's create that plan. What are the things we're doing, and when are we going to do them? And that's probably the thread for the whole of today. It's how do you move from compliance as a document, as a statement, to actually being an ongoing program, a plan that you have, that somebody owns, and there's evidence of it being put into action. Okay, cool. So we skip on one more, Chris. Thank you.
No problems. Interesting point as well is so in the years that I've been in accessibility, I'll be honest, I'm still yet to find one organization that does everything right. Okay, so remember that you've got loads of parts in terms of accessibility, you know, looking at your internal estate as well as obviously looking at your external public facing content as well. I think looking at those numbers there, I think you'll agree it's nice to be in a collective that, you know, we've got people there that are doing some accessibility. Okay, so we've got obviously people on there that are covering 2.2 AA, 18%. Fantastic. I think the main thing is it's not always about hitting that level. It's about demonstrating that you are progressively looking at this. It is something that's part of your process. It is part of something that is leading towards working towards a better user experience for your site for disabled people coming on and using it. I think, Martin, we're about to go into a myth, so I'm going to hop onto the next slide there. I can't remember, is this your one, Martin, or is it my one?
I don't think it matters whose it is. It's just a statement of fact, isn't it? That yeah, that there's no such thing as too small when it comes to being in scope. Any public sector body in the UK is in scope for PSBAR. And as Chris just said, it's not just your main website, it's all of those microsites you own, it's all of your third-party sites, you know, those portals that are provided by, you know, third-party providers, whether it's a planning portal, an applicant tracking system on careers. All of those things are they're owned by you, and they are in scope. And our friends' PDFs are in scope too.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we forget is actually you may be quite a small organization, but actually the parts of a process or the information that you're processing is quite significant. It's potentially a journey stopper for somebody that's trying to just get something done. And if if you've got a portal that's blocking that, it can make quite a big impact. Martin, come back to this one. So what happens if you don't comply? It's a
Yeah,
very
well,
broad
I
question.
suppose I'll whiz through the enforcement side of things just from a process perspective, so that anybody who doesn't know or isn't aware of how this works has a little bit of a better understanding. There's two things to think about in UK public sector when it comes to enforcement. There's Government Digital Service, or GDS, as I mentioned before, and what they're doing. And then there's also Surgeon 10, which might affect some of the organisations that are on the call today. So, yeah. So the first thing to reiterate is that PSBAR isn't just guidance. If in case anybody wasn't clear on that yet, it's a legal requirement. So there is formal monitoring, and then the enforcement process behind it starts with GDS, and so. GDS will take a sample of the UK public sector websites. They don't publish, to my knowledge, which sites they are going to monitor or going to test. They have published in the past some documents, some info on what they found when they did testing. So post that testing happening, but they won't tell you it's going to happen. What they will do is they'll go to your website, they'll run some accessibility tests. And you know where they'll likely start? The accessibility statement. And so what they're looking for is evidence that you know where you're at and you have a plan. And then what they're looking for is whether the websites and the applications that you have meet the accessibility requirements. As I say, whether the statement is present and accurate and signals that there's a plan, whether known issues are documented, and what steps you're taking to remove those barriers. So if they find if they find something that they think they need to bring to your attention, they'll typically get in touch and give you 12 weeks in which to evidence what you are doing to put right what they've found, essentially. And so the key isn't to wait until you get the communication to then take action. If you're taking action immediately or already through a planned program, then that's what you present. Assertion 10 is slightly different. Assertion 10 is applies to town and parish councils primarily. Um, and what you're looking to do there is essentially provide a statement that says we are compliant. Now, I worry about a lot of town and parish councils because of the data we've just looked at in the poll, that a lot are returning assertion 10 saying we are compliant, but at the same time, their statement and the work isn't evident. There's no program of activity. What the enforcement looks like is from GDS, you get those 12 weeks, and they can then refer on to the ECHR, but nobody wants that. As I say, it's a legal framework, it's a legal requirement. So yeah, I suppose key, you don't need to prove perfection, just prove progress in a plan when that knock on the door happens. So that's it from an enforcement perspective, but the enforcement isn't the only consequence. The consequence is really, as Chris mentioned earlier, it's on people. So yeah, I'll let you pick up on that point, Chris.
Sure. I think it's important as well when we talk about enforcement. Nobody wants to get to enforcement position. Even GDS, they don't want to get to that. What they want to see is improvements coming through to your site. And obviously, part of that is making sure that you're getting the support and the help and the knowledge behind you so that you are improving your sites. I think somebody did ask a question around what's in scope. So just straight off of GDS site, you've got gov.uk. These are domains that tend to appear on the list. Gov.uk, ac.uk. You've also got NHS UK. So anything that's kind of public facing that has those domains, you will be sitting on a list somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be audited on a weekly basis. It may just be that actually eventually you get around to an audit. I think for us, one of the things that we did have a conversation with somebody about is it feels a bit like terminology, sitting duck syndrome. So if you are sitting there and you know that you've not got an accessibility statement ready, you know that you're not put it into your processes, and you've not seen anything go through development phases to improve this, and you're not talking to people, then you're probably going to be one of those sitting ducks, and you can avoid that by just making sure that you kind of prioritize things. Going back to the citizen side of things, remember this whole process is about people, about making sure that people can get to where they need to get to. There are a couple of regulations, a couple of laws around that. So you may have come across the Equalities Act of 2010. Okay, so if you have, perhaps if you haven't, there's protected characteristics in there that specifically state around disability inclusion, along with others. However, we focus on disability inclusion today, and that looks at making sure that if you are an organization that are inviting clients or customers in, that includes you, but also includes staff. So remember, when we talked about those compliance levels, about internal intranets or internal websites that you potentially got your staff going into in a gov service or a public sector, there's a reason why they're scoped in. It's because part of that aligns to obviously the Equalities Act of 2010. So I think it's really important that we focus on that. When we are looking at the citizen level, I think probably the biggest piece of advice I can give is invite people in with lived experience to come and give you feedback on what is working, what isn't working on your website. You'll be amazed. In fact, I think I am still amazed every time I have a conversation with somebody that comes in, perhaps with a slightly different perspective or a disability perhaps I've not come across before, because that happens too. You may have people that have multiple disabilities that impact certain things in a specific way. For me, having those conversations, that's where I've learned the most around how do I make my website more accessible to those people. Get them involved, have them part of your process. Do you know what? Employ them. They come and help you. Perhaps there's loads of things that you can do to make sure that that is part of it. So remember, accessibility, people focused, people over process will win overall. So I think that's kind of my message to that. I know, Martin, we'll come to you with an example of where somebody had been flagged with the GDS and they had
Yeah,
had comms going out. And I know you had a story that's a real life story around what happened.
yeah. So this was a college. Um, the I don't know the exact web address that was linked to on their statement, but it was a generic kind of group email, and they missed two emails from GDS. The first one saying, "We've audited the site. You've got 12 weeks to make it." It went into spam. The second one also went into spam. The second one was seen, but people thought it must just be spam. And then eventually someone realized it wasn't. By that point, the referral process was in play already, and it was escalated to EHRC. And so you can imagine that there were some difficult conversations being had within that organization around that time.
I think one of the two things that we kind of learn from this is that actually you may already have people. In fact, you will have people in your organization that aren't ready for these types of emails to come in, or perhaps these types of audits. So I think, for us, one of the areas that we focus on, particularly if we have somebody, we do have people come to us and help with GDS audits. And you know what? We're part of that too. We get GDS audited. We've had things come in through audits, which we've gone out and been transparent and fixed as well. So we're part of that process. The main thing is to make sure that all your staff that are sitting at the end of perhaps these accessibility emails or these contact forms, they actually know what they're receiving. Because I think part of it is that you get this GDS and it could be quite terrifying if you get this thing saying that 12 weeks, we're going to start escalating. And you don't know where to start. So I would probably recommend a little bit of training up front with your staff to understand what happens. What's the process when something like this email comes in? And how do we deal with it? I think, Martin, you said this one went into spam. An easy way to kind of remediate that is potentially not pass. Some people have accessibility email addresses. Really make sure that you've got the right people monitoring those email addresses so that they know what's coming in. If that doesn't work, then form-based entries can be quite good as well. So making sure that if somebody is raising an accessibility issue or a barrier, it's got to be really simple for them to do. It's got to be accessible, but also it's got to be monitored so that when you do get these comms come in, you know what they are and how to deal with them. It's an interesting one. I think it's over to me. So real life failed audit. So I think for this one, this was a client that we've worked with. We've not mentioned the name. I don't think it's and again for us, it's not the right thing to do. We wouldn't do that. It's mentioning organizations' names as they go through. So we've called this one Fire and Rescue, who effectively had failed an audit. Okay, so remember when GDS audit, they audit a sample. Okay, so they'll pick a very small sample, perhaps a key user journey through your site. And what they'll do is they'll test that through manual accessibility testing. They'll have some automated testing that will come alongside that as well. And then what they also have is lived experience testing that comes through and it highlights what barriers are. So Fire and Rescue failed one. In their words, it was worrying time with multiple pieces of work happening at the same time and a short deadline to resolve it. So remember, 12 weeks feels not long, is it? When you think about that, in terms of you've got to understand what the barriers are. You've then potentially got to have conversations with design teams and developers, try and work out how you're going to fix this. Because most of you will be on big public facing sites, you can't just send an update. You've got to let people know that there's an update coming. So before you've even got to the point of testing it and developing and then putting it out into public, you've got quite a big process. You've also got this big magic word of budget. Have you got budget to allow you to make the changes. So I think that, there's certain things that come in. Have you got the right level of ownership? Do you have somebody that can make a decision that goes through, that means that you can get these sorts of barriers fixed really quickly? So I think there's certain things that we can do. So one of them is obviously make sure that you've got sponsorship. So somebody knows if an accessibility barrier comes in to your website, for your website, if you've got senior leadership that have budget approval for it, that you've got their time, you've got resources, it's amazing how much quicker you can work through things and actually combat that. So it's worth actually, having a dry run before you get to that. What if this happened tomorrow? What would we do? And see if you can sort of cull together a process. We can help you with that. If that's something that you are struggling with, we've done it with a couple of other clients. We can definitely help you. We also practice that internally as well. Okay, so when we get audits come through, it's usually all hands on deck, but we do have a process that we follow when we get a GDS audit. That goes for anybody. So if we do have external complaints or an accessibility barrier come through, we handle it very similarly. But I think for us, we have got experience in dealing with those types of queries. Okay, so that's kind of one example. If you've got a story yourself, we'd love to hear it. If that's something that you wanted to share outside of the call, we're very happy to kind of listen, perhaps provide a little bit of guidance to you as well if you need that. So what have I learned? So my team, remember, we do digital accessibility testing. So we do manual auditing. We test with assistive technologies. We test with manual tools like particularly our checker tool. So we have an internal checker. We also go out and do training. So we do get a lot of questions coming in from organizations at different levels. So I think these are some of the things that we've learned. So rule number one, treat accessibility as an ongoing program. Okay, don't treat it as a one project and done. If you are in that state of mind where you've got projects, I don't know, you might get budget for one project of accessibility. Once that project is done, everybody's going to be quite excited about it. It's brilliant when you're in that position, but actually project ends, people move on, and what happens is your organization will start to lose traction. You'll slow down, things will start to creep back in again. So I would recommend always treat accessibility as an ongoing program rather than a project. Okay, this is one that we found: smaller frequent audits. Okay, don't wait until that yearly audit. Okay, yearly audits are fantastic, you should do them, but don't wait till you get to that. Okay, you want to be continually, frequently auditing, even if it's just, I don't know, pick a small journey. So I don't know, somebody coming to your site and registering. Okay, spend a little bit of time, just test the registration. Okay, frequent audits. It means that actually what happens is they're more impactful. You can get more people around you, support you, and remediation and that decision is smaller. Okay, so rather than wait until the end and having a big audit and then having to fix loads of things, we've found organizations that we've worked with that have prioritized this and brought in frequent audits every design stage. Have actually had better results, smaller decisions, quicker to implement things. Embedding accessibility into every phase of design, which will lead to fewer accessibility issues post-production. So one of the things that we do more with clients now, which I've noticed particularly over the last 6 to 8 months, is we're now testing more Figma files than we've ever done before. So these are files where the design teams that we've not even developed anything at this point yet. We're still talking about how it looks, what the design looks like. It's a really good opportunity to get other people in to those discussions as well. But it means that, you know what, if you can find 2 to 3 accessibility issues like color contrast or perhaps the layout, maybe you're putting really important information at the bottom unexpectedly. Just having that really quick glance through the design and fixing and removing some of those accessibility issues at that stage, we found clients, do you know what, genuinely enjoy improving the accessibility of the site because it just makes sense and it's much less stressful. You've got much wider gaps for getting things implemented. And I think if you're just embedding accessibility at a design phase, even if that's a discussion before you get to design, I promise you'll see a reduction in how many accessibility issues go through to your production site. Okay, so have a look at that. I think it's worth spending some time on. Okay, consistently seek feedback from people. Why do we create websites? I think that's the ultimate thing. Ask yourself the question, why are we creating websites? Why are we creating documentation? It's for people. Okay, so we need to make sure that people can actually use it rather than expect just technology to be part of that. So try and ask people outside your design team. That's not picking on them, okay, but it's about actually broadening that, getting more perspectives in. So ask people with real lived experience of disability. You'd be amazed when you start talking to people, even people that you wouldn't expect. You know what? They've got friends, family, loved ones that perhaps have disabilities that they can bring significant perspective in to really help you with that. So, for me, try and get your design, get more people talking about it. I think that's ultimately it. And that should help. So they're just 4 things that I found. There were a few others, but I think mainly just keep it going as a program, keep it agile, okay? Embed accessibility in as soon as you possibly can and just bring people in. So ultimately, if you can do that, a lot of other things become a lot easier. Okay, so perhaps if you've got anything that you've learned through, pop them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you as well. But what I am going to do is I'm going to pass over to Martin, and we're going to talk about the hidden risks, so PDF and document accessibility. And I've just passed over to you, Martin, but I think we're doing this one together, aren't we? So
yeah, I think I can't remember. Have we got the poll first?
We may have. If not, what I will do is I'll show some details. I think we've got the poll after this one. So,
okay.
Interesting fact, actually, I picked up a recent webinar that I attended, in-person event. It really got me thinking. So, it's estimated that 25% of front-end developers, okay, so it's an estimation of 25,000 front-end developers. Now, this is setting up the PDF discussion, okay, so it's compared to 321 million Microsoft Office license holders. Okay, so it means things like the speed of document creation is more than the speed of website page creation. So think about that. We focus very heavily on accessibility of websites, which we must do. Okay, but actually you tend to find that it's a lot slower than document creation, which again, if you've got 321 million Microsoft Office users, have a think about how many documents perhaps all of us create on a daily basis. Even, just myself this morning, I've created probably 3. That's 3 more than a website that I've created. So I think what we're saying is the impact and the speed of this is much more significant with obviously documents than it is websites. So the problem's slightly bigger, I think, if I dare I say it. So I can come to you, Martin, with the poll.
Yeah, so the poll is quite a simple one. It is, how many PDFs do you think you have published on your website right now? And the bandings are 0 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 1,000, or 1,000 plus, or you don't know.
I think either way, Martin, they're big numbers, aren't they? Big numbers. If you're thinking,
yeah,
if you've got a PDF as well, how many pages that then has? Because I think we've recently come across a few that have got 300 to 600 pages on a PDF.
Yeah, I've heard some stories internally. The biggest individual PDF that I've seen us work with was 684 pages, which was, I think it was a meeting and minutes and all sorts of stuff. But I hear the product team sit right behind me. Through the system, there's been a 2,000-page document. We use a conservative estimate of 5 pages per PDF, but the reality is probably closer to 10.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the volume of PDFs on people's sites because, well, let's see the results before I tell you the because. Okay, so I'm surprised by how low I don't know is. So what we've found when we're having conversations with people is a lot of the time organizations just don't know how many PDFs there are on the site. I'm really surprised if that 48% at under 250 is right. It'll depend on the organization mix that we've got in the room. Um, but even some of the smallest councils we've come across have got hundreds, if not thousands, of PDFs because they accumulate over time. And they are an increasing issue. If you go back to the accessibility statements, what we continually see is that the templates have a section for PDFs, and most organizations will correctly state in there that unless a PDF is essential for delivery of a service, if it was created prior to the 23rd of September 2018, which is the date of PSBAR coming into force, then that PDF is out of scope, which is absolutely true. But when we analyze PDFs, there are a lot still being created and being added each year, and the trend line is one of a almost not quite a hockey stick, but it's definitely an upward trend in terms of creation. It's not going down, and so yeah, there are some obvious challenges with the PDFs. I know, Chris, you come across these during audits all the time, so perhaps you can talk through some of these.
Yeah, I think if I'm honest with you, the biggest question I tend to ask when from a consultancy's perspective is a PDF the right format for you? Because we tend to, a lot of people create PDFs without realizing that actually there are better ways of presenting information. So whether that's, for example, having a dedicated website or a web page rather than a PDF, I think that's one of the things that we tend to ask with. But I think for us, I think the question is, why are PDFs a challenge? They're scary sometimes, I'll be honest, they can be, particularly if you've got lots of tagging in there and lots of bits and pieces. And do you know what? Some very tight deadlines as well. So I think the main thing is PDFs, they're not accessible by default. You have to put some effort in. Okay, there have to be some things that you do as you go through to make sure that things like the layout's correct. You're not creating a 600-page PDF. And I was asked the topic of, if you've got that many pages in your PDF, surely there must be other topics that you can break that PDF into. So I'd always look at, making sure that your PDF starts its journey with at least thinking about accessibility. Okay, there are some things that we can help with. We do have some guides that we can send out. So if you are interested, again, by any means, reach out to us. We'll very, very happily share the guidance that we've got on how to make some of your PDFs more accessible. We obviously do have the tool as well. If you ever wanted a demo of that, come and find us. Often they have really complex formatting. So we like to put things like forms in. We like to have images in there. We like to have graphics that perhaps come out and be interactive. So we tend to probably overuse the PDF for loads of things, like I said, into areas that we think is the right format to start with. So often they're really complex, the formatting. They have lots of headings in there, lots of text. And I think for us, you have potentially thousands of files. And I said the reason why we pulled the metric in about so many people having Microsoft licenses is because as quick as you're potentially remediating them, you might remediate with 5 in a day and 10 have been created from somebody over there. So I think for us, you're going to have thousands of files. Where do you start with that? Okay, so I think there's some facts that we've got in terms of how you split that down. I know, Martin, you said about what's in the scope and what's out of scope. But I think also as well, it's about starting with your critical journey. So if you've got PDFs that are part of a really significant critical journey that's coming into your site, then it feels right to be starting with that and challenging it. So, try to break those thousands of PDFs down into something that's at least a starting point. And that could be, get rid of the ones that you don't need to remediate initially. Doesn't mean forget them, bring them in, but also make sure you've got a mechanism there for people if they do need that in future to ask for something they can, but also breaking it down into sections you can start to manage. I think, remember, PDFs that could be created across the whole organization. Okay, so if you look at an accessible website, you've probably got a development team that create a web page, everybody piles in, they all look at it, make sure the website's right. There's a lot of governance around those types of sites to make sure information's right. Probably not so much with documents or PDFs. They get created by everybody. So I think that's a big one that we kind of reference in. You've got a big boat. it's quite difficult to plug all of the gaps in one go to stop the boat sinking. You need to start somewhere. So I think, for us, making sure that you're kind of breaking that down. Haven't got it on here, but why is a big challenge? Probably got a lack of experience potentially in your organization that have enough training or understanding on how to actually remediate a PDF as well, which can be quite difficult. So if you think you've got 50 million PDFs that are coming from all different directions, and you've got one person in your organization that knows how to remediate them, you're going to very quickly get to a bottleneck with people not being able to get documents remediated. So try and work out those platforms that are spitting out inaccessible PDFs, the ones that are automated. Have a look at those, but also look at how you can then potentially bring a little bit of automation into your testing from a PDF perspective, but just make sure that you're not burying it and putting your head in the sand, because that's probably the wrong thing to do. Okay.
All right.
Martin,
So
I think
yeah, so I've talked a lot about what we find as a commercial team when we're out in the wild looking at accessibility statements and things. And this caught our eye on again, it was a local council website, and on their accessibility statement, they actually had a section about PDFs saying that they've found 2,100. They were non-compliant, and it would take 850 working days to remediate those files at a cost of around about £83,000. So you can understand the size of the challenge around PDF remediation in the UK, which is why, yeah, shameless plug incoming. We built something that does this. So yeah, I think the next slide, Chris, I think just kind of runs through how you might think about your PDF. So first you have to figure out how many you've got. And so it'd be interesting actually if I could go back and do that poll again. I might have a section that said whether it was a guess or not, because I think there's probably many more than we found on that poll. But you got to find them first, then categorize them. So one of the things might be they predate PSBAR. Other reasons, as Chris ran through, what is the purpose of the document? Can I archive these? Do I need to remediate them, or can they go into a pot? Which are the prioritative ones? And if I go back to that same thinking again, I probably can't do nothing. I can't ignore the fact that all of these PDFs are inaccessible, but I can't do everything. It's too expensive. It's too difficult to do every single page of every single PDF. So let's figure out what is proportionate action for you on your PDFs, build the business case, and then you work through them methodically, or even intercept the click of the PDF with an HTML version of the PDF. Now that's work your team could do, or we can do that sort of thing as part of the PDF product that we've built. Those are the things you could do. An HTML version of PDF is at least an acceptable alternative version, which will be which you can then reference in your statement as a step you are taking. So it's evidence of an action plan, and that action plan being put into practice.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. I think probably it leads on quite nicely to disproportionate burden. Okay, so the question is, would it be disproportionate for us to fix all of our PDFs? Okay, so a very quick show of hands, I think, in the audience there, if you pop in the chat whether you've come across disproportionate burden before, if it's perhaps a new term for you. I'm going to cover it in some depth as well, just so that you understand where we go with it. But when we're talking about disproportionate burden, what we're saying is, going back to Martin's example there with £83,000 to remediate it, the amount of hours that would be, they're significant numbers. And obviously for us, we look at that and go, well, is it proportionate for us to fix all of those barriers across PDFs? So you tend to find the word disproportionate burden coming in, particularly around PDFs. Now, I think where we're getting to is technology is really starting to come into its own. It's still developing, okay, so it's still part of it. However, there is a little bit, this is something that I think you'd probably bear in mind for the short-term future. is those disproportionate burden claims that you have got potentially on your websites with PDFs. There are tools coming along now that will effectively undermine that slightly, or perhaps give a little bit of context around some of the actual issues. So, for example, if you had 250 PDFs on your site, and now you could have a tool, whether it's ours, potentially someone else's, there's obviously a few others out there. But now we're looking at technology as closing some of that gap around disproportionate burden. So actually looking at the cost of remediating is reducing. The technology is there, it's enhancing to be able to pick up more accessibility issues, the ones that could be programmatically tested. Now you're looking at a much smaller problem. Okay, so things like crawling your website and understanding how many PDFs you have would have been quite a challenge. You can start to do that now with technology. You can start to fix some of the accessibility barriers that are coming in. You can start to put some of those workarounds in. So I think probably where we're saying is there is just something to bear in mind and keep in focus is that actually disproportionate claims, if you do have them, I think are going to start to be pushed a little bit to go, well, actually, is it still disproportionate burden if you can fix them? And there are tools out there. So by all means, if you are interested in that, come and talk to us. But I think it's just something to bear in mind as you look at your process. There is something else as well. So you've got third-party suppliers and vendors. Okay, so you're probably all working with third parties, whether they're developers that are helping develop your sites, through to checkout, login, authentication, all the areas, card details. Okay, if you're outsourcing a digital service, it doesn't necessarily, you're still accountable for that service. And the reason for that is third parties, they're not automatically exempt. Okay, so when you're looking at your PSBAR statement, you're looking at your accessibility statement, whether you're meeting AA compliance, if you've got a third party on your site, you know what, they're not automatically exempt. They can be exempt. So the exemption only applies when the content is not funded, developed, or controlled by a public sector organization. Okay, so when we say funded, we're talking about whether you've paid for that service to be introduced to your website. That would be funded. Okay, and again, developed or controlled. If you're looking at any of the areas, there's very small area that aren't included in that. But if you've got third parties, they are in scope. And guess what? You're responsible for picking those. So if you are working with a third party that you feel don't value accessibility, you can't see that commitment coming through, really think about whether they're the right partner for you. Okay, so suppliers also must provide evidence of accessibility, but public sector organizations, you should conduct independent testing, even if it's just a high-level test of things like, can I get to it with a keyboard? Does it have an accessibility? Did the third-party supplier have an accessibility statement? Is it really transparent? You can do things like that. You can also ask for voluntary product accessibility templates, or ACRs, so an accessibility conformance report. You can also get them to provide how they monitor and test accessibility as well. Okay, so I know we're limited on time. We are going to run over slightly. We'll carry on as we go through. But I think it's just important for you to realize that even if you've got third parties or vendors on your site, ultimately you are responsible for selecting those through procurement. You are responsible for how they develop, and you're also responsible for holding them accountable for the changes that you need them to make sure your service is accessible as well. Okay, so it's kind of as we're looking at what does good look like. Okay, so some of this we've covered as we've gone through. Evidence of testing and monitoring. Okay, so whether that is that you're running audits on an annual basis or whether you're running them in your sprints, get the information in. Okay, keep it. Don't just do an audit and just throw the audit away when you're done. Keep it as a record that you've tested and you are committed to it. Monitoring, cheeky plug. Okay, so we do have an accessibility checker. The reason why that does, why we use it, is it does automatic testing. Okay, so remember we do manual testing as well. It does the automatic testing that flags anything new that's coming in, so it reduces our load, but it also monitors as we go through. So really important if you do have that. Again, clear ownership and governance. Okay, so when those accessibility barriers do come in, you've got somebody there that can help you, that's probably senior, that's able to get things moving. but also have some really clear ownership. If you know that something's coming in, I'll give you a good example. You've produced a video, you've sent the video out, it doesn't have closed captions on it, or it doesn't have a transcription, but it's your comms team or your corporate affairs team that have actually sent that information out. Make sure there's clear ownership on them being able to be part of that fix, okay, and give them training. Again, it's down to procurement or the other areas that just make sure that there's really clear ownership of where the actual barriers are and the governance that sits around that, okay. Have a documented remediation plan, okay. Try and project that out. You know, you have to be careful that you don't give away industry secrets. That's fair. But if you know that you've got a barrier on something like your contact form, but you know that it's not fixed right now, but it's going to be fixed in next sprint or next quarter, you know that you've got that fixed and nailed down, or perhaps you're redeveloping your site, then make sure that you've documented that remediation plan to show that that's the work that you're doing. It helps you out when GDS or perhaps, you know, do get an external complaint come in, that you have that ready to give. Okay, and obviously with that, demonstrating continuous improvement. Have your team upskilling. Make sure that they're really picking up on the fundamentals of accessibility. Make sure that, you know, if you've got an accessibility barrier that keeps coming in, are you monitoring to make sure that doesn't keep happening? Is there the same accessibility barrier being introduced again and again? Okay, so a good example of there is to maybe template things, bring some templates in, help with that. Okay, and then obviously for us, probably gone on a lot about it, but a strong accessibility statement. Okay, make sure people know about it, and I think that really sings a lot in terms of just demonstrating your commitment to accessibility and what you're trying to do along the scene. Martin, is there anything you wanted to add to this, or?
I think we're over time, Chris.
We're
So
over time.
I'll leave it for
No
next
problems.
time.
Okay, what I will do then is any questions that got asked, we will come back to you with a response. But those that are still here, if you want to get a free webpage accessibility check, we do have a lovely QR code on there. Feel free to take that up. If you've got any other questions outside of today, let us know, and we will we'll share the recording. It's been fantastic to have you here with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.